Jalen Carter trade rumors are heating up. Could the Chicago Bears get involved? We're going to dive into that. Plus, are the Bears about to get some unexpected good news? Let's dive into both these topics here on today's show. My name is Harrison Graham. Before we jump on in, guys, I'm all over social media. If you want to find short-form Bears and NFL content in real time, give me a follow all over the place. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. It's at HGrahamNFL, same handle at all three platforms. I'm also on Facebook. You can find me if you search Harrison Graham Chat Sports if you're on your app. If you're on desktop, just go to facebook.com/HGrahamNFL. Posting short-form content on the Bears, on the NFL. I would appreciate your support. Links to all of those platforms in the comments and description of this video. Okay, let's talk a little Jalen Carter here when it comes to NFL trade rumors. Could the Bears be involved? Jeremy Fowler reports that the Eagles have received calls on the defensive tackle who is extension eligible, entering his fourth season. Of course, the Eagles just paid Jordan Davis. Would the Bears be interested? My initial reaction is no, and I still think that's probably the case. But Easton Butler, who's actually a Packers blogger, claims that 5 teams have called Philadelphia about Jalen Carter and that the Bears are one of those teams, along with the Packers, 49ers, Seahawks, and Raiders. He said others have called to, quote, kick the tires on him. Now, I'm very skeptical of that. Not necessarily like, I don't know who this Easton Butler guy is. I don't want to question him specifically, but there's a lot of evidence we have that the Bears would not be interested on Jalen Carter. Now, he's a hell of a player. There's no question about it when it comes to the Eagles' defensive tackle. Didn't have his best year in 2025, but when he's engaged, when he's locked in, he's one of the best interior defensive tackles, especially from someone who can just penetrate the pocket as a pass rusher in the NFL. He's very, very good. That's why he was considered arguably the best overall player in the 2023 NFL draft. Now, I think there's been effort concerns. That was something coming out of Georgia. We know about the character red flags coming out of Georgia. Obviously, the car incident where he indirectly was kind of involved and a teammate losing his life. It's hard to say how much of a role he actually played in that. But that aside, there were concerns on top of that. Remember, he was way out of shape at the pro day. There was questions about, does he actually love football? He did have a down year in year 3, which is also a bit of a concern considering now he is extension eligible. Do you want to commit big money to this guy? And that's where I also get questions or have questions about, well, why is Philadelphia making him available? Because he's way more talented than Jordan Davis, who they just gave huge money to. Now, from a Bears just on-field standpoint, he would be by far the best defensive tackle on this team and the most talented defensive lineman. Now, you could debate whether he or Montez Sweat would have more impact next year, but from a talent standpoint, Jalen Carter is certainly the better player. But here is why I am skeptical of the Bears' interest in Jalen Carter. Ryan Poles famously passed on Jalen Carter when the Bears needed a defensive tackle. The whole Eberflus era, it's like they need a penetrative 3 technique. Well, Jalen Carter is that to a T, and they pass on him because they were concerned about the off-field stuff. They were concerned about his character, and they took a lot of heat for that. They traded down a pick with the Eagles. They drafted him. Bears got a 4th-round pick and drafted Darnell Wright, which has worked out well. It kind of felt like one of those, well, maybe this works out for both teams. But now, 3 years later, the Eagles are at least open to trading him, it sounds like. So I just wonder, like, the Bears passed on him 3 years ago. I'm supposed to believe now Ryan Poles, who had concerns about him, and I was told by multiple people at the time and been reminded again recently that he was off the Bears draft board entirely. They're now going to switch their opinion on him and then pay big money to a player that Philly is potentially willing to trade. They'd have to pay him within the next year or two. I think Philadelphia making him available is a big red flag. The Eagles are not a team to pivot off of young ascending talent. And again, I know Carter had a down year. He also had some shoulder problems last year. Like, you would think that's a guy the Eagles would want to pay long term. And apparently they are not willing to do that. So more thoughts on this coming up in a second. I'll wrap up the talk on Jalen Carter. But before we continue, let's talk about Polymarket and live trading on Polymarket. If you go back to Week 17, Chicago had just a 39% chance to beat San Francisco. If you remember at the time, the Bears were playing well. The offense was humming, and the Niners had major defensive issues. I know it was in the Bay, but I was like, I think that's really good value. And I took Chicago because of those reasons. And they came one play short. I almost had a huge payday. $100 would have turned into $256 total. I would have won $156. But just an example of what making a play on Polymarket can look like. Plus, with Polymarket, you can trade in and out on momentum shifts without getting blocked or penalized. With in-game trading, once the Bears got up, I had the option to ride it all the way out, which I did, or I could have sold early. For example, I bought at 39%. It got up to 55%. If I sold, I would have gotten a $41 payout, which would have been the right play at the time, but I wrote it out and almost got the big money. You can't do this with traditional sports books, so get started today. Polymarket is legal in all 50 states. Download the app now to get to the top of the wait list. The only way to do that is by clicking the link down in the comments and description of this video. Okay, final thoughts on Jalen Carter. One, the Bears have already passed on him before. I'm supposed to think they're going to be interested in him now with the same GM in place. Very skeptical of that. Two, Philadelphia, an organization who's had a ton of success making him available when he's only 24 years old, that is a big red flag to me. And three, I don't even know what it would cost. Like, I was asked on Twitter, what would you trade for him? I don't know, 2027 conditional pick maybe? I'm not giving him a first-round pick this year. I don't really want to get my day two picks because I don't know if he's going to fit in well. So maybe I'd give a conditional pick next year, and if he hits, then it turns into a better pick if it works out in Chicago. I guess I'd be okay with that, but I think in general, I'm probably staying away here. Even though it's a major need, there's too many concerns when it comes to Jalen Carter, in my opinion, at this point in time. So I'll ask you guys, would you trade for Jalen Carter? Type T for trade, or we can type P for pass. Let me know down in the comments section below. All right, let's go from that story to potential really good news for the Bears. Courtney Cronin, I think on Friday, this kind of got lost in the shuffle with my other content, went on ESPN 1000, and she basically said, look, I think the Bears are going to get the comp draft picks for Ian Cunningham and his departure and job promotion to become the Falcons GM. This has obviously been a heavy debated topic. I've popped off on it a couple of times because I think the Bears that would be a screw job if they didn't get the picks, and it sounds like maybe they are going to get the picks after all. Let me just read what Cronin said. She said, there's no precedent for appealing for it because this doesn't typically happen, but if you're loud enough in the right places and the right voices are the ones speaking, then the league is going to listen. And they have formally appealed in their own way and their own process of doing it, but we just don't know yet. But at this point, they both, Atlanta and Chicago, made a compelling case that the Bears deserve their picks. I actually think the Bears will get the picks because the precedent here and other front offices have dealt with this too, with the structure and the power structure of who's actually making the football decisions. Anytime Matt Ryan gets in front of a microphone, he's saying, quote, I'm not the final say in personnel. That's Ian Cunningham. It feels like it's not in the spirit of the rule if the Bears don't get their picks. That is what I've said all along. The second Matt Ryan at Radio Row during the Super Bowl said, I've never even been in a draft meeting. Ian Cunningham's in charge. This is his show. He's making the decisions. That's all the evidence you need that he is the primary front office executive in Atlanta. I don't want to hear about some loophole this president of football position Matt Ryan has. He is there as a stabilizer. He is there to listen. He is there to, I think he even said, look, I can break ties if there are tiebreaker situations, but he is an extra resource who's going to be involved in a lot of different facets in the Falcons organization, not strictly a talent acquisition front office executive. That Ian Cunningham is in charge of that. So the second we heard that, and then of course Ian Cunningham at the Combine said, yeah, based on how I understand the rule, the Bears should get the draft picks, complimented the Bears organization, all of that. So I just don't see how the NFL cannot give the Bears the picks. And quite frankly, it's kind of an easy PR win for the league. Like, if they don't grant the Bears the picks, you're creating an outcry with all of the Rooney Rule stuff, and you say you care about promoting minority candidates, but then you do this. So it's like, to me, it's an easy win for the league. You can change the language of the rule to make sure loopholes like this don't happen in the future if teams were to add a position to their football structure. I just don't think there's any real argument based on the evidence of how the Falcons are talking about who's in charge, so on and so forth. The job title itself, I just don't see how the NFL could justify not giving the Bears the 2 third-round picks, which obviously would be huge for Chicago. They're entering this time now where they're going to be a contender and they may have to pay a quarterback big money soon in Caleb Williams. Well, you got to hit on draft picks when you pay your quarterback big money. And you know what? You need draft picks to hit on. So every pick matters. And that's why all these people on Twitter at the time were like, get over it. The third-round picks. Ryan Poles has been bad in the third round. Yeah, you're right. He's whiffed on third-round picks. So let's never pick in the third round. Like, guys, like that every pick is important. Seventh-round picks are important. You can use them in draft pick swaps for players like all the time. Like these pieces of ammunition really come into play when you're building a roster. And a third-round pick in the next 2 drafts, that is, I'm not going to say that's ultra premium ammunition, but that's 2 top 100 picks. That ain't nothing. I'll tell you that right now. And look, based on how it sounds, the reporting, things I've heard, it doesn't seem like the Bears are going to make some sexy splashes in free agency. They might make a few, starting level moves. I think they'll probably add a linebacker. Clearly, they're going to try to re-sign Kevin Byard, and if not, they'll pivot to another starting caliber safety. We'll see on left tackle as well. But, they're not going to get Trey Hendrickson. So what does that tell me? That tells me they're focusing more on the draft. And to get an extra third-round pick, that would give them 5 picks in the first 3 rounds. A first, 2 seconds, 2 thirds. It gives you a lot of darts to throw. That gives you ammo to move up, move back if you want to. So I hope the NFL does right by the Bears. It seems like there's momentum. Poles talked about it at the Combine, that they've spoken to the proper channels with the league and that they believe their case applies to what the rule actually is. So we'll see what happens there. And again, I'm not expecting a wild free agency. Now, things could change. I do think the Bears could make a trade. I don't think it'll be for Jalen Carter, but maybe they would circle back to like a Kayvon Thibodeau or something like that if the price is right, if they need to fill a position. But you need draft picks, especially if you're not going to go crazy in free agency. And so I hope the Bears get these picks. I think they deserve them. And we should hear from the league any day now. It's around this time when the league announces the compensatory draft picks for the upcoming draft. So stay tuned. When that happens, we will bring it to you. Okay, name a free agent you do want the Bears to sign. I know a lot of you guys are going to say Trey Hendrickson. What I would say is don't expect it. Never say never. Maybe it's a huge smokescreen. The Bears do want him, but there's been no reporting that the Bears are in on Trey Hendrickson. So let me know who you would like to see Chicago sign. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because we will be live tomorrow, 10 a.m. Central Time, for day 1 of NFL free agency. Probably put a morning video out as well. So maybe some final free agency predictions for the Bears, so stay tuned for that. We will see you guys soon. Subscribe and bear down.